You're not half the woman your sister is. My mom said at dinner. I pushed my chair back and said, then she can start paying your rent. Dad turned pale. Rent? What rent? You're not half the woman your sister is. When my mother locked eyes with me across our dining room table and said those words, the world seemed to stop spinning. The familiar clatter of forks against Mom's good china went silent. Even the hum of the old Frigidaire in the kitchen seemed to pause, as if the house itself was holding its breath. A younger version of me would have ducked my head, forced a smile, and pretended that her famous apple pie could somehow sweeten the poison she'd just served. Instead, I pushed back my chair, Dad's old wooden one that had been creaking for 20 years, and felt it scrape against the hardwood floor like fingernails on a chalkboard. Then maybe she can start covering your mortgage payments, I said. The words came out steady, though my heart was hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Dad's coffee mug stopped halfway to his lips. Mom's fork clattered onto her plate. My sister Brooke looked up from her phone for the first time all evening, her perfectly manicured eyebrows raised in surprise. Mortgage. Dad's voice cracked like he was 16 again. What mortgage payments? And there it was, the question that would split our family wide open like a rotten apple. For 3 years, I'd been the invisible safety net keeping our childhood home from sliding into foreclosure. 3 years of automated transfers from my checking account to theirs. 3 years of eating ramen noodles while they enjoyed Mom's Sunday roasts. 3 years of pretending I was fine living in my cramped studio apartment while they got to stay in their 4-bedroom colonial with the wraparound porch and the oak trees Dad planted when Brooke and I were kids. Mom's face went white as her good napkins. Ashley, this isn't the time. When would be the time? I stood up, my legs shaking but my voice getting stronger with each word. When you're giving Brooke another medal for being the perfect daughter. When you're bragging to the neighbors about her new promotion at the marketing firm. When exactly would be a good time to mention that I've been keeping this house from getting repossessed? The silence that followed was deafening. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Rodriguez next door watering her petunias, completely unaware that the Thompson family was imploding just 30 feet away. Dad set down his mug with the kind of careful precision you use when you're trying not to shatter something. Sweetheart, we never asked you to. You didn't have to ask. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. Remember that phone call, Mom? February 2020? When you called me crying because the bank was threatening foreclosure. When you said you just needed help this once until Dad's contracting business picked up again. Brooke was staring at me now, her phone forgotten on the table beside her untouched plate of pot roast and mashed potatoes. For once in her life, my golden child sister was speechless. The truth was finally crawling out of the shadows where I'd kept it buried for 3 long years. And there was no shoving it back in. They called me sensitive like it was a 4-letter word. Sensitive when I was 15 and my science fair trophy didn't make it into Mom's annual Christmas newsletter, the one that somehow always found room for every single one of Brooke's achievements, from her debate team victories to her homecoming queen crown to her full scholarship to Northwestern. Sensitive when I graduated summa cum laude from state with my accounting degree and Mom's response was, "That's nice, honey. Did you hear Brooke got promoted to senior account manager?" Sensitive when I moved to Denver after college, found a good job at Peterson & Associates, and slowly built a life for myself in a city where nobody knew I was Brooke Thompson's little sister. But I wasn't being sensitive that February morning when Mom's call woke me up at 6 a.m. Her voice, usually sharp as her tongue, was shaking like autumn leaves. "Ashley, honey, I know it's early, but," she was crying. Actually crying. I'd seen Mom cry maybe 3 times in my entire life. "The bank called yesterday. If we don't make the payment by Friday, they're starting foreclosure proceedings." I sat up in my bed, looking out at the Rocky Mountains through my apartment window. What happened to Dad's business? The construction industry it dried up after the pandemic. Nobody's building new houses. The contracts he had fell through. We've been using credit cards to make the mortgage payments, but... Her voice trailed off. I knew what came next before she said it. I'd always been good with numbers, good at seeing the patterns that other people missed. "How much?" "Just this once, Ashley. I swear, just until things turn around. $2,500. I closed my eyes and calculated quickly. $2,500 would wipe out most of my emergency fund, the money I'd been saving for a down payment on my own place. The little house I'd been looking at in Golden, the one with the garden space and the mountain views. But this was family. This was the house where Dad taught me to ride a bike in the driveway, where Mom bandaged my scraped knees, where Brooke and I built blanket forts during summer thunderstorms. Okay, I said. I'll transfer it today. Oh, sweetheart, thank you. You're saving us. I promise, just this once. Just this once became March. March became April. April became a year, then 2, then 3. The amounts varied, sometimes $1,500 when Dad got a small job, sometimes $3,000 when the water heater died or the roof needed repairs. But the calls always came, and I always said yes. I automated the transfers after the first year. Set them up for the 15th of every month so I wouldn't have to think about watching my savings account drain. I told myself I was buying time. Time for Dad's business to recover, time for my parents to figure things out, time for the economy to bounce back. What I was really buying was silence. Their silence about my sacrifice, my silence about my resentment, and everyone's silence about the fact that the golden child couldn't save the family home. But silence, I learned, has a way of getting expensive. 36 months. $74,800. I knew the exact number because I kept every receipt, every bank statement, every text message that started with Ashley. I hate to ask, but I kept them in a manila folder in my desk drawer, like evidence in a case I hoped I'd never have to make. My apartment in Denver became a shrine to careful budgeting. Grocery shopping with coupons clipped from the Sunday paper. Thrift store furniture that I learned to refinish myself from YouTube videos. A 10-year-old Honda Civic that I babied because I couldn't afford car payments on top of everything else. Meanwhile, my Facebook feed was full of Brooke's adventures. Weekend trips to Napa Valley with her boyfriend, Trevor. Photos from Michelin-starred restaurants in Chicago. Her kitchen renovation, granite countertops and stainless steel appliances that probably cost more than I made in 6 months. Not once did Mom's Christmas newsletter mention that Ashley was keeping the family afloat. Not once did Dad's proud phone calls to his buddies at Murphy's Tavern include the detail that his younger daughter was paying their bills. But I convinced myself this was temporary. I was 28, then 29, then 30. My co-workers at Peterson and Associates started asking why I never joined them for drinks after work, why I always brown-bagged lunch, why I was still living in the same studio apartment while they bought houses and started families. I'm saving money, I'd tell them, which was technically true. Just not for myself. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in March. I was reviewing the quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Ashley, honey, the furnace died. Repair guy says it needs to be replaced. $4,200. I know it's a lot, but spring is coming soon, so this should be the last big expense. I stared at the message until the words blurred together. Spring is coming soon. Like the furnace had deliberately waited until the end of winter to die. Like this was some kind of considerate appliance failure. That evening, I drove up to Lookout Mountain and sat in my car watching the sunset paint Denver in shades of gold and pink. I thought about the life I was supposed to be living, the house I should own, the vacation I should take, the retirement account I should be funding. Instead, I was 30 years old with $1,700 in savings and a Honda Civic with 180,000 miles that made concerning noises when I started it in the morning. I transferred the money that night, just like always. But something had shifted. The silence that I'd been carrying for 3 years suddenly felt too heavy, like trying to hold your breath underwater until your lungs scream for air. 2 weeks later, the invitation arrived in my mailbox. Cream-colored cardstock with elegant script. You're invited to celebrate Brooke Thompson's promotion to Vice President of Client Relations at Morrison & Associates. The celebration was being held at the country club. The same country club where Mom and Dad's membership had supposedly been cancelled due to financial hardship. That's when I finally understood, I wasn't helping my family survive. I was helping them maintain the illusion that they'd never needed help at all. The text message came on a Friday afternoon while I was finishing up quarterly reports at Peterson and Associates. My cousin Jamie, the family gossip who somehow always knew everything first. OMG Ashley, did you see Brooke's Instagram? Your parents threw her a huge party for the VP promotion. The pictures are insane. My hands trembled as I opened Instagram. There it was, post after post from last weekend's celebration. Brooke in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, surrounded by flowers and champagne glasses. My parents beaming beside her, Dad in his good suit, Mom wearing the pearl necklace I'd helped her keep when she pawned it 2 years ago and I'd quietly paid to get it back. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the banner stretched across the background of every photo, Congratulations to Brooke Thompson for saving the family legacy. Saving the family legacy. I scrolled through the comments, each one a knife twisting deeper. So proud of you for keeping the house in the family. What a devoted daughter. Your parents are so lucky to have you. My desk phone rang. I ignored it. My computer screen blurred as tears I'd held back for 3 years finally broke free. Around me, my co-workers continued their Friday afternoon conversations about weekend plans while my world crumbled in 60-second Instagram stories. That evening, I sat in my tiny kitchen with every bank statement from the past 3 years spread across my second-hand table like pieces of a puzzle I'd been afraid to solve. Transfer after transfer, each one labeled family emergency in my careful handwriting. March 2021, $2,800. June 2021, $3,200. December 2022, $4,500 for the roof repair that Brooke posted about, calling it Dad's early Christmas present to the family. I opened a new spreadsheet and started entering numbers. Every transfer, every text message, every phone call where Mom's voice got that particular trembling quality that meant I was about to open my wallet again. The total glowed at me from the screen, $74,800. Almost $75,000. Enough for a down payment on a house. Enough for a new car, a real vacation, a wedding dress I'd never need because I'd never had time to date seriously. Enough for a life. Instead, I'd paid for Brooke's promotion party while eating store-brand cereal for dinner. I screenshotted every text message. Just this once, Ashley. We're so grateful, sweetheart. Don't worry, Dad's got a big job lined up next month. This is the last time, I promise. The promises stacked up like layers of lies, each one making the next easier to tell. At 11 p.m., I called Jamie back. Hey, about that promotion party for Brooke. Oh my God, it was incredible. Your parents went all out. Though honestly, I was surprised you weren't there. Mom said you were busy with work. Jamie, I said, my voice steadier than it had been in years, what exactly did Mom and Dad tell everyone about how they managed to keep the house? The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Ashley, they said Brooke has been helping them out. That she's been sending money to cover expenses. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I worked. By 3 a.m., I had built a case that would make any prosecutor proud. Bank statements, screenshots, printed emails, and a timeline that told the real story of who had been saving what. I organized it all in a black binder with color-coded tabs, transfer records, text messages, promises, and the real story. The numbers were undeniable. $74,800 over 36 months. An average of $2,078 per month, automatically deducted from my checking account while I ate peanut butter sandwiches and drove a car held together with duct tape and prayer. I printed everything twice, made copies of the spreadsheets, and saved backup files to 3 different cloud storage accounts. This wasn't just about being heard anymore, this was about being believed. Monday morning, I walked into my boss's office at Peterson & Associates. Linda Martinez had been my mentor since I started at the firm, and she'd watched me turn down promotions that required travel, skip company retreats I couldn't afford, and eat lunch at my desk every day for 3 years. Linda, I need to tell you something, I said, closing her door behind me. She looked up from her computer, took one look at my face, and immediately gave me her full attention. Sit down. What's wrong? I told her everything. About the house, the payments, the family who erased my sacrifice while celebrating my sister's success. Linda listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. Ashley, she said finally, you've been essentially working 2 jobs for 3 years. Carrying your family financially while excelling at your work here. That's extraordinary. I feel like an idiot. You feel like someone who loves their family. She leaned forward. But Ashley, what are you going to do about it? That afternoon, Jamie called again with news that made my decision for me. So apparently your parents are planning this huge appreciation dinner for Brooke. They've invited the whole family, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. It's going to be at that new steakhouse downtown. You know, the fancy one? They want to properly honor her for everything she's done for the family. When? Next Saturday. They're calling it a night to honor our family hero. Isn't that sweet? Sweet. Right. That evening, I sat in my car outside the house I'd been saving. Our childhood home looked exactly the same as it had when I was 10. White siding, black shutters, the maple tree Dad planted when I started kindergarten now tall enough to shade the entire front yard. The same house where I'd learned to ride a bike, where Mom taught me to bake cookies, where Brooke and I had built snow forts every winter. The house I'd sacrificed everything to save, only to watch someone else get the credit. I pulled out my phone and texted Jamie back, "Count me in for Saturday. I wouldn't miss it for the world." Then I drove to Staples and bought a USB drive and a presentation remote. If they wanted to honor a family hero, I'd give them the real story. The Golden Corral Steakhouse buzzed with the sound of my extended family celebrating someone else's generosity. Through the windows, I watched my relatives stream in wearing their Sunday best, Uncle Pete in his navy blazer, Aunt Linda in the dress she saved for weddings and graduations, my cousins looking like they'd rather be anywhere else but were too polite to skip a family obligation. Inside, Brooke held court at the head table wearing an emerald green dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, her smile radiant as relatives approached to congratulate her on saving the family home. Mom and Dad flanked her like proud generals, accepting handshakes and praise for raising such a devoted daughter. Dad kept clapping people on the shoulder and saying things like, "We raised her right," while Mom dabbed at her eyes with tissues, playing the role of grateful mother to perfection. I stood outside until the slideshow began. Through the windows, I watched childhood photos of Brooke and me flash across a screen, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, family vacations to Yellowstone. But there was a narrative being built with each image. Brooke the achiever, Brooke the success story, Brooke the daughter who came home to save the day. The final slide was a photo of our house with text that made my stomach turn, "Thank you, Brooke, for preserving our family legacy." That's when I walked in. I'd dressed carefully, my best black pants, the blazer I'd bought for job interviews, my grandmother's gold watch that was the only inheritance I'd ever received. I wanted to look like someone who deserved to be taken seriously. The USB drive felt heavy in my pocket as I made my way to the front of the room. Dad was at the microphone, mid-speech about how proud they were of their daughter's sacrifice. "And we are so grateful that Brooke stepped up when we needed help the most. She's shown us what family loyalty really means." The applause was thunderous. I waited for it to die down, then stepped forward. "Dad," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the room, "could I add something to that slideshow?" He looked confused but handed me the microphone. Behind me, I could hear chairs squeaking as my relatives turned to look. Mom's smile flickered. Brooke's face went pale. I pulled out the USB drive and handed it to Jamie's husband, who was running the computer. "Could you load this up, please?" "Ashley," Mom said, her voice tight with warning. "What are you doing?" "I'm telling the truth." The screen flickered, and suddenly my carefully prepared presentation filled the wall. The title slide was simple, "The Real Story, 36 months, $74,800. The room went dead silent except for the soft hum of the projector. "If we're here to honor the person who saved our family home," I said, turning to face the crowd, "then let's make sure we're honoring the right person." I clicked the remote, and the first bank transfer appeared on screen. March 15, 2021. $2,500. From Ashley Thompson to Robert and Carol Thompson. The numbers spoke louder than any words I could have used. Transfer after transfer filled the screen, dozens of them, stretching back 3 years. Each one labeled with the date, the amount, and a note from my meticulous record-keeping: emergency furnace repair, property taxes, roof leak, vac system. Gasps rippled through the dining room like stones dropped in still water. I heard Uncle Pete whisper, "Jesus Christ," and Aunt Linda's sharp intake of breath. My teenage cousins were pulling out their phones, probably already texting friends about the family drama unfolding in real time. 3 years, I said, my voice steady as bedrock. 36 months of automated transfers. $74,800 while I ate ramen noodles and drove a car with 200,000 miles. I clicked to the next slide, screenshots of the text messages. Mom's voice, desperate and pleading, "Just this once, Ashley. Just until Dad's business picks up." The promises that turned into patterns, the emergencies that became routine. Dad's face had gone gray as old concrete. He reached for the microphone, but I stepped away from him. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," I continued, looking directly at my parents. "I'm here because if we're celebrating someone who saved this family, it should be the person who actually wrote the checks. The applause started slowly, just a few claps from the back of the room. Then it built like a wave, growing stronger and louder until the entire restaurant was thundering with it. Not the polite, obligatory applause from earlier, but something raw and genuine and overdue. Through the sound, I saw Brooke push back from the table and rush toward the restroom, her face flushed with shame. Mom sat frozen in her chair, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad stared at his hands like they held answers he couldn't find. When the applause finally died down, Uncle Pete stood up. "Ashley," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, "why didn't you ever say anything?" "Because family isn't supposed to keep score," I replied. "But family also isn't supposed to erase the people who make sacrifices." I turned off the projector and handed the remote back to Jamie's husband. "The USB drive has all the documentation if anyone wants to see the details. I'm going home now." As I walked toward the door, my relatives reached out to touch my arm, to whisper apologies and praise and questions about why they'd never known. I nodded and smiled and kept walking, because I wasn't doing this for their approval. I was doing it for me. Outside, the Colorado night was crisp and clear, stars scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. I sat in my old Honda for a moment, hands shaking with adrenaline and relief. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda at work, saw Jamie's Facebook post about tonight. "Monday morning, we're talking about that promotion you turned down last year. It's time." I drove home through empty streets to my small apartment that suddenly felt like the richest place on earth. Not because anything had changed about it, but because I'd finally stopped being invisible in my own life. The truth, I learned, doesn't just set you free. Sometimes it makes you undeniable.